My husband and I have been married for almost 3 years and it's been a happy marriage, or so I thought. My husband never expressed any unhappiness or discontent with his life and as a matter of fact, always seems very joyful. We'd known each other for the past 7 years and had been together for 5. We used to go out on dates regularly and we even got along well with each other's families, so in short, we had a perfect marriage. I believe that was because of how much we loved each other, but yesterday, that changed. I wanted to purchase tickets for a concert but my phone was really slow, so I decided to use my husband's phone instead. I didn't ask him since he was in the shower and well, honestly, I didn't think this was significant enough for me to ask about. So I bought the tickets and I opened his text inbox to check the confirmation message, which is when I found a text from one of his coworkers. Curiosity got the better of me and I ended up clicking on it and I saw that she'd written about how much she loved my husband and how she couldn't wait to see him on Monday. I was a little confused and so I decided to scroll further up to see what exactly they'd been talking about. I was incredibly shocked to see weeks and weeks worth of messages exchanged where they'd talk about how much they enjoyed spending time with each other, how they felt like soulmates, and all sorts of other flirtatious stuff. I was devastated to find such texts, and what was even more disturbing was that some of these things were things that he'd also say to me, but in my case, it's alright because I'm his wife. Reading him say the same exact things to some other woman literally felt like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. After forwarding those texts and screenshots to my own phone, I kept his phone aside and prepared to confront him about it as soon as he came out of the shower. I felt angry, hurt, and betrayed all at once, and I honestly didn't know how to react to any of this. As soon as he came out of the shower and saw me with his phone in my hand, sobbing, he rushed to my side and asked me what happened. So I showed him what I found and he got defensive almost within seconds. He snatched his phone away and told me that I had no right to go snooping through his phone and that this was an invasion of his privacy. I ignored all of that and asked him about the texts I found and demanded an explanation, even though deep down I knew that no explanation could ever justify this. He told me that she was just a friend and there was nothing more to it. He even added that she's married as well, so this means nothing, as if that was supposed to make it better. I didn't buy the whole just friends stuff and I told him as much, but he was acting like none of this was a big deal at all. He told me that they'd only been texting for a few weeks and that's all it was, texts. They would just talk and maybe flirt a little, but nothing more. But I knew for a fact that there were emotions involved since he himself had confessed that he had feelings for her in those texts and she had, too. He claimed that he hasn't even let her touch him, so he hasn't acted upon those feelings, and as long as he doesn't act upon it, it's alright. I couldn't believe that he was saying this and none of it made sense to me. I told him that I needed some time away, and even then, I don't know if I'd be able to forgive him for doing this to me. Even if I had assumed that what he said about not being physically involved with that woman was true, they're still emotionally attached, and as his wife, I don't know if I could just accept that. He told me that I was overreacting and taking things too far when this was nothing but just a bit of harmless flirting, which just made me wonder how many times he's done this over the years. Had I not checked his phone, I would never have learned that this was going on behind my back, since his behavior with me at home literally betrayed nothing. He seemed perfectly happy with me, and we'd even been on a date to a fancy new restaurant a few days ago to keep the romance alive. And after we came back home, he continued to flirt with his coworker as if it was totally normal to do so. My husband and I got into a huge fight where he accused me of exaggerating and said that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. He kept saying that since he hadn't done anything with his coworker, it's not even cheating and there's no reason for me to act like he's betraying my trust. He even said that even though he has feelings for this woman, he still loves me more and wants to stay married, since he knows that he's probably either just infatuated with her or attracted to her, which will pass eventually. But he just doesn't seem to understand that the fact that he is so emotionally attached to another woman has made me feel disrespected in my marriage, and I can't see him in the same light anymore. It's been almost close to 7 hours since I left and came in with my parents, and a few minutes ago, I finally told them exactly why I'd come to live with them. I explained the whole cheating situation to them, and they were shocked that my husband, who had seemed to have been the perfect man for me, could have done something like this. They were obviously livid and demanded that I file for divorce immediately. They reassured me that I was certainly not overreacting, and I've also learnt that, be it physical or emotional, cheating is inexcusable. Them telling me that what my husband had done was wrong did a lot to reassure me, since I'd been questioning my own decisions and sanity because of how hard my husband was trying to downplay the seriousness of his affair. My husband hadn't apologized even once by then, but had only been texting me to gaslight me into thinking that I was overreacting somehow. He kept telling me that since nothing physical had happened, it was alright. He even said that if I hadn't gone snooping through his phone without asking him first, then I never would have found out about this, and we wouldn't be fighting about something so petty and unnecessary right now. After I didn't respond despite him sending me several messages consecutively within a matter of minutes, he decided to threaten to ruin my reputation if I filed for divorce. He called me up and told me that if I did anything that could ruin our marriage, then he would make sure that he spreads the nastiest rumors about me that he can think of, and then I'd be left with absolutely nothing. I was furious that he dared to threaten me despite what he'd done and felt nothing but pure hatred for this man I'd have given up everything for just a few hours before. Anyway, I'd had enough of his bullcrap, so in a fit of anger, I hung up and then forwarded the texts from his phone the only person who he still feels answerable to, his mother. My mother-in-law and I aren't particularly close, but I know for a fact that the only person my husband is afraid of is his mother, so the only way to get him to realize his mistake and leave me alone was to tell his mom. I could have just let slide, but the fact that he was trying to manipulate me into thinking that I was somehow being too emotional just didn't sit right with me. I'd given this relationship my all and he'd gone ahead and cheated on me despite everything that I'd done for him. I was so angry that I just couldn't let it go, so I did something petty, and I'm kind of glad that I did, truth be told. At least I'm getting back at him in some way, even if it's just telling his mom about what he's done. And today I learned that apparently, I've created a huge mess for my husband by informing his mother about what had happened. After forwarding her those messages last evening, I'd called his mom and told her everything that had happened so far, including the emotional affair and the gaslighting and my decision to leave. I also made sure to include the fact that her son had actually had the audacity to threaten me when I refused to respond to his messages. Just as I'd suspected, he himself hadn't told his mom anything at all, probably out of fear about how she'd react. After overcoming the initial shock of learning such awful things about her own son, she spoke to me quite calmly and thanked me for informing her, reassuring me that after today, her son wouldn't bother me anymore. And then, this morning, my husband called me up sobbing and begging me to call his mother up and tell her that I'd lied, since he received a call from his family lawyer a few minutes back and was told that his mother had decided to cut him out of her will and he'd just lost the entirety of his inheritance except for the money and an old beach house in Cabo that his dad had left him. I was really confused as to why my mother-in-law would take such an extreme step because, in spite of what he'd done to me, he was still her only child. And it just didn't add up. I'd thought that she'd just make him stop bothering me, but this was way more than that, and I could sense that there was something deeper. So I asked my aunt, who had a few common friends with my mill ages ago, about what the reason could be. And she told me some things about my husband's family which finally helped me understand why she did what she did. For some context, my husband's parents had separated when he was very young, but he'd never told me why. He was raised by his mother, who had built a business from scratch and was the founder of one of the biggest makeup companies in the country. His dad was also quite a successful businessman, but not even close to his mother. His mom was a formidable woman and she'd always been strict while he was growing up, while his dad was more of a fun parent. They'd never formally divorced but just lived separately and continued to co-parent their son. Only today did I learn that the real reason his parents had separated was because his mother had caught his father cheating on her. She didn't file for divorce since that would lead to a custody battle, and she didn't want that to affect her son, but she couldn't continue living with my husband's father either, so she left and started working. His dad only visited him on the weekends and spoiled him rotten, which is why my husband grew to fear his mom and adore his dad. My husband had always known that his mom had been cheated on, but that didn't stop him from claiming that his father was absolutely perfect. I'd always just assumed that my mother-in-law lived separately because they must have had problems in their marriage, but didn't ever imagine that it could have been cheating, just because of how highly my husband spoke of his father. I guess now it all adds up. The cheating apple doesn't fall far from the cheating tree. But anyway, my husband sounded practically hysterical on the call, and I was actually kind of scared of what he might do, so I told him to calm down and see what I could do to fix things, since in spite of everything that had happened so far, I still had been married to this man for so many beautiful years. However, now that I know why his mother did what she did, I don't feel the need to fix anything at all. In fact, I feel kind of great about the fact that this is happening to him right now, and don't think I should lie to my mother-in-law at all, because this is exactly what my husband deserves. I know I'm being petty, though, and he's losing out on an absolute fortune, so I just wanted to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So Ida for not wanting to cover up for my husband and lie to my mother-in-law after he cheated on me? Update 1. I decided not to tell my mother-in-law that I lied to cover up for my husband. He's just facing the consequences of his own actions, and he has nobody to blame apart from himself. I know this is going to sound petty as hell, but I'm actually happy that she decided to cut him out of her will. We've never been close, but this feels like the biggest show of support I could have ever expected from another woman, and I'm forever going to be grateful to my mother-in-law for standing up for me against her own son. I know it couldn't have been easy for her, just as it isn't easy for me. I'm just going to sit back and let karma do its work, since none of this is my fault. I've also filed for divorce, and while my husband is doing everything in his power to convince me to stop, ranging from his threats to hurt me to sobbing and begging me to come back, I've made it clear that this is happening. My parents are also quite supportive of this move and have told me that I can stay with them for as long as I need to until I find a place of my own. I quit my job a year after I got married, since my husband wanted me to take care of the house, and I agreed, since I didn't particularly love my job either, and I was okay with being a housewife, and I liked the thought of making our home a beautiful place for my husband to come back to. I'd also planned to have a baby in the next few years, but clearly, that isn't happening anymore. I've started looking for jobs now, though, to get my life back on track, and I sort of regret giving up 2 years that I could have spent working on my career for that man who, as it turns out, didn't even value anything I did for him. My husband is furious since I texted him one last time and told him that now that I know what his mother went through, I'm not telling her that I lied or taking back what I said. He tried to argue with me, saying that I was being heartless and he didn't deserve this just for a bit of harmless flirting with a coworker. That seemed funny to me since it wasn't just harmless flirting but a full-fledged emotional affair. I'd read up on the internet about it a few days after I left his place and I'm convinced that had I not left, he would have continued cheating on me with either his coworker or maybe even multiple other women and I'd never be able to find out. I made it very clear that his mother had done the right thing by cutting him out of her will and he deserves it. I also made sure to add that if he called me again then I'd also be filing for a restraining order against him and that won't look too good for him. I reminded him that it was not just the affair but also the fact that he threatened to ruin my reputation and even hurt me in whatever way I could if I filed for divorce, so he could safely assume that I was not going to do anything to help him out this point onwards. It's been an hour since then and I've finally blocked him everywhere. The next time I see him is going to be in court in a couple of days, so I'm just trying to mentally prepare myself for that. On a happier note, I have a job interview with quite a reputable company the next morning, so I'm just hoping that I can put this whole thing out of my mind for a day and just focus on the upcoming interview since this is my first one after a really long time. Update 2. Something really scary happened today and I'm actually shaking while I'm typing this out right now. As I said earlier, I had an interview today and it went pretty well. As I was leaving the building, I had this feeling that someone was watching me, but I just thought that I was feeling extra paranoid since I'd left the house after so long. As soon as I got to my car, I felt someone grab me and it was only because of my years of training in martial arts that I was able to defend myself. I turned around to find myself face to face with my husband who looked like he could hurt me. I'd caught him by surprise, so it took me seconds to push him away and get into my car. I locked it instantly while he tried to open the door. I drove away as fast as I could and I saw my husband fall back, but I didn't wait to see if he was hurt or not, just drove on and waited a few miles away from the building. As soon as I heard the sirens, I drove back to the building and thankfully, my husband had been hurt by the force with which I'd driven away and was lying on the ground since his foot was a bit hurt. I told the cops what had happened and they arrested him immediately, which made me feel a little relieved. Even while he was in pain, he kept cursing at me and accusing me of ruining his life. I was so shocked that this man had become so unhinged over his inheritance that he was willing to actually hurt me physically. I came back home just an hour ago and have been trying to calm myself down. I'm obviously already pretty stressed out because of the fact that I'm going through a freaking divorce, and on top of this incident just made everything so much worse for me and my mental state. I've already spoken to my lawyer and have decided to file for a restraining order as well, since it's very clear that my husband has become unhinged and I don't feel safe with him out there anymore. I've been feeling as if I'm not even safe in my own home, which is saying something, and my parents are also quite concerned about my well-being right now as well, since I've been quite shaken up since then. I do feel a little guilty that he's going through so much, but I also know that this is not my fault. He is the one who cheated on me, and that's what I keep reminding myself time and again so that I don't soften up towards him or anything even for a second. I'm also considering therapy so that I can deal with my feelings about this whole situation. I feel emotionally drained and I'm just genuinely done with him and his drama. I'm just hoping that this whole thing is over soon because I can't have things like this happening to me. I'm just done with this. Update 3. Last week, my divorce finally came through. There wasn't much of a case since my husband had tried to hurt me and there was proof of him being emotionally involved with another woman. He didn't have to stay in prison for a long time, even though he tried to hurt me since it was his first offense and he hadn't managed to hurt me at all, so he got off with a misdemeanor. That was a little disappointing for me to know, but there was nothing that I could do about it. He can't bother or harass me anymore, though, since I now have a restraining order against my ex-husband, so he literally cannot touch me. The last time we met was at court and he made sure to yell out awful things about me for the very last time. I managed to ignore it since I'm trying to move on and speaking to him is absolutely pointless. However, to my surprise, his mother got in touch with me right after our divorce was finalized and asked to meet me. I agreed, knowing what she had done. We met for coffee near my house and she apologized to me for everything that her son had done and told me that she wanted to transfer the inheritance to me instead. Of course, I wasn't entitled to that and declined it, as nice as the offer was. Plus, I was already getting a substantial amount of alimony and compensation from my ex-husband, and that was all the satisfaction I needed. Instead, I suggested that she leave it all to charity and she seemed to think it was a good idea as well. Meeting her also gave me the opportunity to properly thank her for whatever she'd done, because not a lot of mothers would be able to punish their own sons and would probably even try to blame their daughter-in-law instead. So I was really grateful for that and I made sure that she knew. We parted amicably and she told me not to hesitate if I ever needed any help, which was just so sweet of her. And as everyone knows, I've been living with my parents ever since I found out about my husband's affair, which was almost 3 months ago. I started my job 1.5 months ago and it's been going pretty well. I've already started looking for a place in spite of my parents insisting that I live with them for as long as I want to. I'm trying to come to terms with the fact that I'm divorced now and my husband turned out to be a completely different man than I'd expected him to be. I've heard from a few of our common friends that he's single now, since amidst the whole divorce drama, he'd publicly announced his relationship with his coworker, but she denied it altogether and stayed with her husband instead. Well, Serves him right. But whatever, it's not my business anymore and I'm glad I got rid of him. The only person I'm going to love now is myself.